2 nights ago, it was cold, it was windy, and our son calls at 8:30 and says, "Dad, we're without power. What do we do?" We're going to talk about that in this video.
When our son called us, like in our mind, we were transported back to Moore County, North Carolina just a couple of weeks ago. And we thought, what are we dealing with here? Because we looked at the outage map on the utility company website, and there were over 1,200 homes without power. So, I mean, it wasn't just 2 or 3 or 4 here and there. It was a substantial amount of homes. And on the website, it said, cause unknown, when power will be safely restored, unknown. And so we immediately thought we need to get some things together. We need to get it over to their apartment and get them up and running again. So what did we take to their apartment, and how did we help them figure out how to prioritize their power needs? We're going to share that information with you. But first, if you don't know us, I'm Hope.
And I'm Larry.
And this is Under the Median, where every week we talk about practical frugality. You know, the thing with Moore County is, I think when something like that happens, all of a sudden, like, the whole conscience of the nation is like, oh, we need to get our ducks in a row. We need to figure out how we're going to sustain ourselves during a power outage, particularly if it's in cold weather. And immediately, when the problem is solved, when everybody's got their power back on again, when it's no longer blaring at you from the 6 o'clock news every night, everybody sort of moves on and they forget that they were supposed to take some steps to get prepared. When Larry and I heard about Moore County, immediately Larry said,
I was so sad to see the news reports, and they showed video of a lot of people in their cars leaving their communities, leaving their homes because they didn't have power, they didn't have heat, and they weren't prepared. And I thought, boy, if they only had a few things in their homes for preparation, they wouldn't have to leave. They could just hunker down and roll right along with it. So what do you need in the case of a power outage like that?
The other thing that Larry said when he saw the situation in Moore County, other than, oh my gosh, these poor people, they really weren't prepared. He said, honey, we need to do a video and we need to help our people figure out how to prepare for a power outage. So thus, this video was born. Now, what we'll share with you in this video are the top 3 priorities that you should have when the power goes out.
Well, the first thing that Moore County needed, because this happened at night, it happened about 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. The same thing happened to our boys. They lost power at 7:30 on a Tuesday night. So if you're without power at night, what is the very first thing that you're going to need?
Lights. You don't realize how much ambient light comes into your area from street lights outside your window, from something as simple as a computer screen being lit up in the corner of the room. You don't think about all that ambient light until it's gone. He said when he walked into their apartment complex, even getting up the steps to their 2nd floor apartment, I mean, that corridor was pitch black.
Oh yeah, the parking lot was totally dark. Everything was just black dark. So the very first thing that I thought of that they needed was lighting.
All right, so what'd we take?
Well, the first thing that I grabbed were a couple of these little LED rechargeable lanterns, and these supply a lot of area light when you're without power and you're in the dark. So I thought, as long as they have an LED light, they can get around in their apartment. They can take this if they have to go into the bathroom. That's going to be pitch dark. Their bedrooms are going to be pitch dark. They can see in the kitchen. This is the first thing they're going to need until they can get some other auxiliary lighting up and running. So I grabbed 2 of these and threw them into the trunk of the car.
Now, whenever you take this with you, let's say you're taking one of these lanterns with you into the bathroom, something you may not think about doing, which is super easy to actually magnify the light, is stick it in front of a mirror, and immediately that reflection will give you twice the light that you would have had it not been in front of the mirror. This is another little light that we really, really like. This light, the hybrid light, has this cool solar panel on the top of it. We keep this in one of our windows all the time, and there's enough ambient light coming in through the window that this thing stays charged all the time. Now, Our goal in life is to help you prepare, all right? It's not to sell you these products. But it sort of does you no good if we show you what we use and what we took over to the boys' apartment and how we help them prepare.
And we don't tell you how to get it.
To tell you how to find them, okay? So there's going to be links, guys, in the description of the video. There are a lot of different brands available. You want to do your own research, buy something else, by all means do that. But if you like what we're showing you, we're going to make sure there's links in the description of the video. And if you like the hybrid light as much as we do, we got a coupon code for you. It's going to save you 20%.
Yeah, this one puts out about 600 lumens. This one puts out 1,000 lumens. Either way, that's still a lot of light, and this one's adjustable. It'll run about 100 hours on a charge. You can also charge your phones or anything that uses USB charging. There's 2 ports on there for charging. So it doesn't have a real big battery. It's got a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. These have a 12,000 milliamp hour battery, so a lot larger battery. They'll run a lot longer. This one is going to be ready for you at all times, because if you keep it in the window, it's always going to be charged when you need it. So, and of course you can USB charge this as well. Very practical things to have. That is the first order of business, getting light.
So what Larry's really trying to say is, when you get one of these lanterns, make sure that you know how you're going to keep it charged, the various ways that you can charge it, and also know how long it will last on a full charge at the various settings, because all of these have different power settings and you don't need to necessarily run it on high. So use the least amount of light that you really, really need. Don't, use up all of your energy in this running on a high for 2 hours, when if you put it on the low setting, you can run it for much, much longer. So figure out how much light you really need and run it on the lower settings.
And we just to mention, we found another lantern. This is kind of a budget model. It's less than $18
There you go. Menards,
at
guys.
Menards, and that's bright, 1,000 lumens. It's also rechargeable. It has some emergency lighting on the top there. Really good to have. Grab a lantern when the power goes out, and you will not be in the dark.
One of our viewers actually just sent me a photo. I think it was almost a little smaller than this. She said it was the size of a soda pop can.
Oh yeah, they make different sizes.
And her brother had gotten it from Walmart. So these are available all over the place. But what struck me when she sent me that photo was, if you have a lantern that small, perfect to put in your car for winter emergencies. Do it.
Yeah. The nice thing about the LED lanterns is they're a great area light. They're very, very safe to run. You don't have to worry about your kids using them. So they can take these into their bedrooms or take them around the house, and much safer than, say, candles or a kerosene lantern. So I would highly recommend that. Of course, I keep a flashlight on me at all times.
Don't we all? Do you guys carry a flashlight everywhere? Tell me. Because Larry does. Tell me in the comment section if you too are a flashlight carrier. I'd love to know.
I can't tell you how many times I have needed this, and maybe not too many times in an emergency situation, but I've needed this many times. And they make all kinds of really good, bright LED rechargeable flashlights.
More than once, I have been grateful for his flashlight carrying habit, I have to admit.
Okay, so let's cover the other 3 items that I gathered together as a kind of an emergency kit to take over to our boys' apartment that night. One of their critical needs was a refrigerator. James was very concerned that the food might spoil. We didn't know how long the power was going to be out, so I grabbed our 1,800 watt Opus generator and the power station. I put that in the car. I also put in the smaller 1,200 watt unit, and I brought this over for additional lighting for their living room, so they could plug their living room AC lights into this. And I also brought a couple of extension cords to run to those lights, so in case they were going to be without power for a day or two, they could be in their living room, they could watch TV, they could have lights, and they would be up and running.
Now, the advantage of these units, if you watch this for any length of time, you know that we're huge fans of portable power stations. The advantage is the fact that if you live in an apartment, you can use these. The disadvantage is the fact that they are a little bit pricier than some of the other methods that you can use to supply power to your home in case of a power outage. We'll talk in just a sec about a couple of those other options that you might want to use. This baby, though, is on sale right now.
Oh, yeah.
Can I say that? I'm going to say it while he's taking it away.
Sure.
Wait,
sure.
bring it back, and then I'll do my Vanna White thing. We wanted to point this out because this is on sale right now for a really great price. Okay, we're going to put the link and the info, the 411, will be in the description of the video, but you can get the unit and you can get 2 solar panels that go with it for about $1,000 right now.
It's marked way down from where it was, so really, really good deal.
The other thing you might want to think about is as how you're going to power like smaller things like your cell phone or even these lanterns. Having one of these power bricks, always a super good idea. Tons and tons of them made. Different powers, different, like price points. You can find them all over the place.
And the nice thing about this one, you can solar charge that, put it out in your backyard or put it on a window to charge it if you're completely without power. And it has a built-in area light that you can use to read by or get around a little bit. So you have to hold it. That's right, you hold it for a few seconds. So it has different settings, high, low, and then it flashes. So good to have in an emergency, and that way you won't be in the dark, and you'll have some power to run some of your things.
Now, one of the things that Larry mentioned that I think is super important is the fact that our son had already prioritized what he felt like they really, really needed to supply power to in the apartment. So that, I think, really should be your next task after you begin to think about lighting, how you're going to supply yourself some light, how you're going to supply some power, is what do you really need to supply power to? And that should always, of course, be in my famous prioritized list. But if you want some help figuring out, you're like, I don't know, like I got a whole house full of stuff here. How am I supposed to figure out, what items really I need to supply power to? We did a whole video on it. And it was all about how to figure out what your minimum power needs were in case of a grid down situation, power outage, emergency, whatever, you don't have lights or heat, all right? So we did a video on that. That's going to be linked up above and in the description of this video.
Let's go back to the Moore County situation in North Carolina. One of the problems that they had when they went dark on that Saturday night was they had absolutely no communication. Yep. So not only were they in the dark because they didn't have power, they didn't have any information at their fingertips. Mm-hmm. There's no television. There was no cell phone activity.
Cell phone towers were all down.
They were down.
Not unusual in a true emergency situation. I think I've mentioned this before. My sister lives in Alabama, Huntsville area. Tornado ripped through there a few years ago. The cell phones were so overwhelmed, like you couldn't get a signal in or out. You couldn't. It was like 48 hours before we knew that they were safe.
Yeah, in the case of Moore County, they had a large area. Almost the entire county was without power. So that took the cell phone towers out. It also meant they didn't have internet. No internet, no cell phone, no television. The only thing that they would have had where they could have gotten some information is if they had an emergency radio like this one. This is the one that we have. There's a lot of different makers. Midland makes one, a lot of different manufacturers. That doesn't matter. The nice thing is to have one of these that has the AM band and maybe even the shortwave band so you can get information. With AM during the daytime, you can get stations that are up to about 160 miles away. So in the case of Moore County, there was a lot of other radio and television going in surrounding counties. They could have gotten information with one of these. At night, you can get stations as far away as 600, 700 miles. So you're going to be able to get information if you have one of these. Lots of different ways to power a radio like this so that you'll never be without power. It has NiCad batteries. Let's see if I can get that thing open here. There we go. It has NiCad batteries, and you can run it off of AA batteries. It can be run off of a USB power bank like this. You can power it that way, or you can hand crank it to get power. But I think about 30 seconds of cranking gives you about 2 minutes of radio listening. So
this is like an exercise for bored teenagers when the power is out. Keep cranking, honey.
Oh, yeah. The nice thing I like about it, it's a very sensitive radio, good, clear reception.
The other thing we really like about this is, first of all, like there are 4 different weather radio bands on it, isn't it? Yeah.
Actually, there's seven different.
Seven.
Yeah.
And we also like that it has shortwave radio. Now, we don't think, when we think of this kind of stuff, this is old-fashioned technology, guys. This is stuff from, 50 years ago. But the truth is that it works. And there are reasons why you need to think about things like AM radio signals, where you need to think about the fact that you might need to get information from shortwave radio. It might happen, and having something like this, it's like under $50, I think.
Yeah, and then this also has built-in emergency lighting. It's got a panel here, and it's got a little flashlight here. Most of these emergency radios have these features. So do your research. If you find one better than this, that's great. But have one. Have one in your home so that you can get the information that you need so you know what's going on.
We would love to know, by the way. Tell us in the comment section, are you from Moore County? Do you have family there? Do you know people there? How did they fare in the situation? We would love to know in the comment section. First two things we just talked about. You need light. And you also need communication. And when you're thinking about those things and you're buying these items, don't wait till the emergency to make sure you know how to use them. Get them out and make sure that you know how they function and how long they will run before you actually run into an emergency situation. Interestingly, one of the comments that our son made to Larry, as Larry had him all set up and power running to his apartment, was, "You know what, Dad? I can now see why I need to learn more about these things, and I'm going to need to invest in some of my own items like this."
Let me briefly tell you how this story ended. We got all the power stations hooked up. We got all the lights going in the apartment. And I'm getting ready to walk out the door and leave, and James is very thankful. I had him all up and running, and the power came back on. Yes, folks, the power, his Christmas tree lit up. I went, "Oh, for crying out loud." But that's good. We're glad that they had power. So,
But we did. Making awareness is everything, guys. Okay,
Yeah.
Now he's aware, and his Christmas gift list just radically changed. I'm just going to say it. Now, the third thing you might want to think about in an emergency situation where you don't have any power is the fact that in winter, depending on where you live, heat is an important thing. Now, we showed you the portable power generators. You can run a small heater in these, but the problem is they're not going to run that heater for very long. Now, this is a smaller unit for those of you who kind of gasp at the price of the larger units. Generally, you can expect to pay, just so you know, the general rule of thumb is to pay about $1 per watt with these things.
that's what they cost.
Right. Now, this is 600 watts. The reason we're showing you this is because it's on sale right now. So we want to make sure that you can grab it if you're interested in getting $200 off of it.
Yeah, that's a good price, and they have $100 off of their 100-watt solar panel. We also have that to charge this up with. So if you have absolutely no power, you can keep this going by charging it on a sunny day, maybe out in your backyard or out on your porch, wherever you have access to the sun. Really good to have. This, like Hope said, it really won't run a heater, but it'll run a lot of other things. So what are you going to do for heat? There's different ways that you can get emergency heating into your home. One way is it's an item that we don't happen to have one, but it's called the Mr. Heater. They make a small buddy. It's called a buddy heater, and it tops out at about 9,000 BTU. Yeah. So you can run a room that's about 225 square feet with that. If you put it on low, it'll run about 5.5 hours. That's about 4,000 BTU. On high, at the 9,000 BTU setting, it'll only run about 2.5 hours on one of those bottled of propane. So they are a little expensive to run, but it's better than freezing if you happen to have that for backup heating.
Now, once again, that is designed for indoor use. Before you use anything, you have to make sure that you're using it with safety precautions in mind. But we don't, as we mentioned, we don't have a Mr. Heater, but we'd love to know. If you've got one, if you like it, tell us in the comments section. It's
Yeah,
something we've actually thought about getting, just so we can show it to you guys and tell you what we think.
Yeah, and in regards to safety, you want to make sure you have a good carbon monoxide detector, a good smoke detector, and have your windows cracked a little bit if they require ventilation. The source of heating that we like, and it's much cheaper than using the propane canned heaters, is kerosene. Now, I know a lot of you can't use kerosene heat due to the fact that you might have some respiratory issues, but I have actually used one for over 40 years now and have had no difficulty with them. In fact, the one that we use is 40 years old, one of the three. You can keep those maintained by just putting in a new wick and cleaning them every so often. The wicks last a long time. I'll get 5 or 6 years out of one wick. So kerosene is relatively inexpensive, and they'll run a long time on a gallon of kerosene.
Once again, with kerosene, you got to make sure that you're taking ventilation into consideration when you're using it. Now, just some really common sense things that you want to do when you're providing heat to an area is make sure that you close off a much smaller area of your home. So you're heating a small area. You're going to huddle together there. You're going to make sure that you are providing some heat around your pipes, because believe it or not, pipes can freeze in some relatively warm temperatures. You want to make sure, is a general rule, that the temperature of the interior of your home does not go below 55 degrees.
One of the first items that I think about to get into use when we have a major power outage is the gas generator. We have about a 3,500 watt generator. That'll run most everything in the house except the air conditioning. And you can run a lot of items. You just don't want to run all of them at once. Yeah. But that will do our washer, our dryer. Our dryer happens to be gas, so it'll run the dryer. It'll run our microwave, coffee makers, certainly the sump pump, which is very important. I hook a lot of lights up to it. I run extension cords, and we get the whole house kind of going off of that. It'll do even the garage door opener. So very handy to have when we have a power outage. We stay put, and with the kerosene heat and the gas generators and these other supplies, we're in good shape to handle a 4 or 5 day power outage with no difficulty at all.
Now, we just saw one on sale this week at Menards.
That's right.
He brought the ad home. He's like, oh, look at this. So it was a nice size gas-powered
it's
generator.
the size that I have.
Yeah, about $320, which actually we bought ours years ago.
I bought mine 8 years ago for $300. Yeah. So I was amazed. This is the one that they have at Menards is a Win, W-E-N brand. Really decent. That's a go and pick that up if you want a gas generator. Good deal on one.
You know, the other thing I think people really need to take into consideration, set your budget. Figure out what your needs are, what your basic needs are when it comes to lights, communication, and heating. Mm-hmm. Figure out those base needs, and then you're going to set a budget, because you are going to need to purchase some things if you don't have them already in your home. Figure out what that budget is, and then figure out how you're going to fund that budget in order to supply yourself with these things.
And we didn't start out with all of this stuff. We started out small. The first thing that I started out with was just a marine battery and an inverter just to give us lights, and we ran a little portable TV. If you can't afford the big stuff, start out small. Start out with a power bank like this, or you can even get a small power station. They make some that go clear. Actually, they make some that are less than $200. So that will at least give you some lighting and ability to keep your phones and computers charged.
We are all about preparing and not panicking. Mm-hmm. But we truly, truly believe that if you're living within frugality, if you're living on a budget, you can still prepare for these things. You just had to figure out how to prioritize what's most important to you. And when you do that, it'll take the fear factor out of it, because we are totally this is not the fear channel.
No.
Never will be. This is the do what you can with what you got. Oh my gosh. I just quoted Prepper Princess. I love her so much.
She's very practical. She's very practical.
Okay, there. So I co-opted Prepper Princess's thing, but she's right. do what you can with what you've got and figure out what you can do, not what you can't do.
Let me say one additional thing. Once you have all the supplies that you want for your home, make sure that your family and other members know what the plan is. Make sure they know where these items are, how to use them, how to hook them up. Maybe you're away for the evening, power goes out, your kids at home.
Yep.
Do they know what to do? So make sure you have a plan in place so that everybody will know how to handle a power outage when it comes, and it won't be a terrible, horrible thing. It will be kind of an exciting thing because you're ready, you know what to do.
So we want to know, are you ready? Do you know what to do? Tell us in the comments section, are you ready for the next power outage? Because eventually it will happen. Now, one of the things that we mentioned a little bit earlier was this whole idea of cordoning off a smaller area of your home. So you're heating a smaller area as opposed to a larger area. There are actually a lot of other tips for keeping warm during power outages that we weren't able to cover in this video, but we did a video on it, guys. It's right over there. Take a look at it and you'll get a lot more tips and strategies for winter power outages.